it's fine. We're all in it together.
I'm out of my mind. So I apologize. And I also appreciate it so much that you're joining us, because you are on the front lines of the event industry, so to speak, right now. I don't know how you're surviving, so we'll go ahead and start off with that. First of all, everyone, obviously this is Paige with Creative Law Shop, and she is my attorney also, but she is an attorney to the creatives, and she has been working, I don't even want to know how many hours since this all broke out, and she's been helping so many creatives, so many couples, so many business owners with this crazy thing that's going on right now. So Paige, how are you faring during all of this, first of all?
I don't know how to answer that question, but thank you, truly. Thank you for having me on here. I really appreciate it. It is so important to me to be able to try to help to get some like actual real information out there, because I've been calling this week, I don't know if this is in poor taste or not, but I've been calling this like triage week from a legal perspective. Every single client that I have that has a service-based industry, well, really every client I have is obviously being directly affected by this. So it's really important to me to actually get to sit down and share some stuff, because a lot of what I'm seeing in Facebook groups and things are incorrect. So thank you for hosting this.
Yes,
it's really
absolutely.
Scary. Yeah,
it's super scary. And you know, I don't want to reiterate for everyone and beat a dead horse, so to say, but it's terrifying to see misinformation from a healthcare standpoint, and then from a legal standpoint too. I just feel like courtrooms are going to be filled after this is over because of this. So not only is it scary for the public health, but also I feel like a lot of people are about to end up in legal battles. So
it's already starting. Yeah, it's not to start off on the scariest note possible, but it's already starting. I'm having conversations every day with other litigators. Just anyways, it's gonna, we want to stay out of that realm.
Yeah,
like everything that we can.
If we possibly can.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's just dive right into it then.
All right.
Scenario number one. This is your biggest scenario, I'm sure. Clients who won't reschedule. Let's talk about that.
And kind of like, if you don't, backing up for a minute, Bronwyn, if you don't mind, the way, just to give people kind of a framework of how I've been tackling this conversation all week, we have 4 different scenarios. Like I was telling Bronwyn earlier, we have the people who won't reschedule. We have the people who are rescheduling and just how we go about that. We have the people who are being difficult through the rescheduling process on either side, not just on a vendor side. And then we of course have cancellation. So anyways, just diving in with that. So clients that won't reschedule. So this is a difficult, I'm going to say that probably for every section, so I'll just stop.
That's okay. Just know, let's just do a disclaimer. This is going to be a very difficult live to listen to if you are on either end of that. But we are doing this because we want to provide you with the truth and the reality of this. So just know that both of us, and I know you do too, we're human beings. We feel horrible for both sides of it, but it is important to talk about this. So we're not going to be apologizing.
That's exactly right. That's
so
I've kind of jokingly, but not jokingly, said I feel like the Grim Reaper of like news when I talk to my clients this week. But you have to sometimes you have to shoot it straight, and that's what we're going to do today. So, anyways, if you are a service-based, if you are in the wedding industry right now and you have brides and grooms who are getting married in the next 8 weeks in a frame, let's see if did the internet go out there? We good?
It might be mine too. It's been so bad.
Okay. Well, we'll be good. I'm using that 8-week time frame just because the CDC, we don't have many guidelines to go off of. The only ones that we have right now are literally the guidelines set out by or put out by the CDC. So if you have clients in this 8-week window, you need to take a really good long look at the facts that we have at hand here. So I'm kind of going to break this conversation. Okay, thank you, Julie. I'm going to kind of break this conversation into 2 parts because this is one area where anybody with a venue, with a brick and mortar business is going to have a slightly different, you'll have different considerations than just somebody with a service-based business. Okay, so starting with venues, brick and mortar, anytime that you are inviting somebody onto your premises from a legal perspective as an invitee, you're going to carry more liability. Okay. So that's just so you can kind of know where my brain starts with all of this.
Right.
So with that being said, you have to know, or you have to just face the question of, are you willing to have people enter your premises right now with a CDC guideline that is out? Some cities and some states, I think California as of today, do actually have local restrictions and lockdowns in place. That's not really what I'm talking about. If that has happened in your city or state, obviously you have to follow those executive orders. Like there are no questions around that. But if you are one of the people who are in a city or a state where you don't have that executive order in place yet, you need to look at the fact that the CDC has put out really, really strict guidelines and suggestions on number of people that can gather, et cetera, et cetera. So the other day, I posted something a little bit inflammatory on my shop Instagram account, but it's true because I was in a conversation with another litigator in town, and we were talking about somebody that will probably get sued. And we were talking about like how we would lay out the deposition questions. And it's not hard. Like for me, these questions are just like this. So if for example, somebody shows up, let's say worst case scenario, let's say that somebody shows up to an event, they infect the rest of the group. You don't quite know where it started, et cetera, et cetera. Somebody's going to get mad. This is a highly emotional time. Yeah. It's very likely that they will respond with litigation. Who would they want to sue? They would probably want to sue the venue. Again, just being really blunt here. They'd probably want to sue the venue because the lawsuit is going to follow where the money is. And the venue will likely have the money. Right. So that being said, the first question I would ask if I were suing a venue for hosting an event the next 8 weeks would be, at any point did you consider not hosting this event? And if so, why? Oh, you thought about it. You thought about not hosting it because of these CDC guidelines. What made you think that you could go counter to what the CDC is putting out there? I mean, I can make that like a really, really hard string of questions to answer.
So if they were to answer it that way, on the flip side, if they were to ask, if they were to answer with that deposition question, no, we never thought about it, then where do you go from there? Just out of curiosity.
Negligence.
Okay.
Yeah. Just flat out negligence. Yeah. Okay. So either way, yeah. And again, I don't want to like talk lawsuits the whole time because I know that just gives people, that can like make people break out in hives. I get that. But that all being said, I want you to take a very realistic look at the liability at play when you're balancing your economic decisions, because I do know we are business owners. We can't just be afraid of, like, we have to run our businesses. We can't just do it from a place of fear. So that being said, venue owners, if you are in a city or state where you allow people to or where you're still permitted to have people, gather in groups of 10 or more, it is absolutely critical that you have them sign an extra liability waiver as they're entering your premises, essentially stating that they are carrying or that they are assuming the risk of hosting this event. They knowingly, with full knowledge, they're not under duress as they are doing so. They are assuming the risk of proceeding with the event. So I'll wait for the internet here for a second. There we go. Okay. So does that make sense? I feel like to me that's pretty straightforward. Okay. Okay.
Definitely. So
then if
let's
talk
about
go ahead.
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, no, you go ahead, Bronwyn. Sorry.
No, you're so fine. I know you're just like, you're probably used to answering these exact same questions for the last at least 72 hours straight. It's probably only been like 72
On
hours,
the-
but it feels like 7 years.
I don't know.
It's crazy. I say it's
On
like
the
dog
hour,
years, right?
nearly on the hour.
Yeah. It's like dog years. Like every single day is a full year, I think. So
Oh, yeah.
who knows where we are.
Yeah.
But as far as
yeah.
couples, you know, these provisions from the CDC are just guidelines. They're not law at this moment, unless you're living in, I believe it's New York City shut down today, or state of California, but everywhere else, it is not law. They're just guidelines. So if they, you know, if they go ahead and host it, one, are their vendors liable to carry it out? And two, if they don't, can they receive refunds? Three, are they going to be held liable? Is there a possibility that they could be sued by their own guests should someone contract the virus and something happens at their event?
I'm going to start with the last one because that's the softball question here. Absolutely, they could be liable. This is one of the scenarios too where I'm not speaking in hypotheticals. I was actually in a wedding last year and dozens of us got the flu in the wedding.
Really?
Like dozens of us. And so anyways, that being said, this can actually happen. I know it because it happened to me. Much less the coronavirus, much less something that we all have noticed and has been declared a national pandemic, or international pandemic, et cetera, et cetera. So absolutely, you can, you carry liability if you proceed. Like, I can't say it any more directly than that. You carry liability if you proceed. Does that mean that you can't proceed? No, assuming, again, like you said, we're not in California or New York or somewhere with an actual, mandate in place. So you can. In terms of whether or not vendors are still required to proceed with offering their services, and I get weird about using the word vendors to describe like wedding professionals, but just because we're talking about a lot of people right now, I'm going with that. Sorry, guys. That would be a contract by contract decision. So I would need to look at somebody's contract to say whether or not they have language built in there that would give them basically an out if it's, there's some wording that you can play with there. So contract by contract decision. But kind of going to my earlier point, I think, and this is me acting extremely conservatively, but I think that we need to right now. I think that it's very wise for service providers to also have their clients sign a waiver as well.
Okay.
The same liability waiver that I'm talking about, and this is, again, this is acting ultra conservatively, but right now we need to do everything that we can to limit our liability.
Right.
So if you're a photographer proceeding with shooting a wedding in 2 weeks, have your bride and groom sign a liability waiver. Again, stating that they know that this is risky, they are assuming the risk. And then technically, again, depending on where you are, you can proceed with that. Did you ask something about refunds, or did I make that up?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
So the question was kind of a two-part, and you answered the first part, but are they contractually bound to carry out what they promised they would do in the contract, even with all of this going on? Can they get a refund if the vendor backs out for health reasons related to this?
Yeah. Again, refunds are going to be, that whole conversation is going to be a contract by contract decision or answer. And that's something I'm going to come back to quite a bit. Technically, that really, I hate to not answer the question, but I don't have a good one unless I'm looking at an actual document because the language would change each time.
Right.
Or the answer would change based on the language there.
For sure. So then let's see.
There you go.
As far as cancellations and everything, sorry, I feel like we're cutting out again. I did have
you're good.
question from a vendor. How should we reach out to clients? Should we reach out to them on their own, or is a mass email okay with the policies as far as legalities? What, is going to supersede the other one? How does that work?
Definitely. Yeah, no, I was really glad when I saw this question pop up, because this is something that not many people are asking before proceeding with doing. And so this is important. So in terms of how obviously this is a really critical, well, delicate time in terms of how you are speaking to your clients. Taking my legal hat off for a second, I think it's really important as a business owner for you to touch base with your clients and just let them know that you're on top of it. You're a professional. You're aware of what is going on, and you are here to make sure that everything's taken care of to the best of your abilities. You know that this is a highly emotional and important time in their life, and you want to help preserve as much of the season for them as possible. I would say something along those lines. Here's what I don't want you to do. I don't want you to mass email your entire like spring calendar list and say, hey guys, we're going to have to reschedule all of your weddings because you fall within the next 8-week period. So first come, first serve, let's go ahead and start rescheduling you. I don't want that email, what I'm getting at, I don't want that email to have any sort of offer within it. It's fine to touch base and it's great to reassure your clients, but don't let it have any sort of offer included within that email, because I don't want you to accidentally wind up in a scenario where you were trying to be nice and you were trying to stay on top of it, but you accidentally created almost like an offer from a contractual standpoint. Yeah. And then you find yourself in a whole different type of issue. So yeah, we can talk about kind of the rescheduling issue a bit more in a second, but if you mass email, don't include any sort of offer within the email. Just say hi.
Yes. And would you suggest that for couples that are outside of that 8-week period? Just a quick checking an email.
Yeah, gosh. So this is where I have never in my life had to literally have like multiple screens and the TV on at the same time in order to have conversations with clients and make sure I'm giving them the most up-to-date information. It's insane. That all being said, of course, we kind of get into the realm of being speculative if we talk outside that 8-week period. So the way that I've been framing it with clients, we know this first 8-week period is the critical period. This is when we can expect to have to reschedule, to have to cancel. It's likely that it will happen. That next 8-week period it's what I'm calling just the gray area right now. It's all a gray area, but that's the zone where we really don't know, because we're hearing everything from 8 weeks to like July, August. So we really don't know. That being said, I think it is good to reach out to, this is just an opinion piece. I think it's good to reach out to everybody on your calendar up until like August and just let them know. And I have other thoughts on that I'll bring up when we talk about rescheduling as well.
Awesome. So let's see. Are there any documents, liability waiver? Okay. Talked about that. We'll talk about some documents in a minute. Getting ahead of myself here. So rescheduling, on refunds. So there's a lot of canceling right now, and they're doing that in favor of postponing. And so my question is, can you talk about this scenario from the couple side and then from the vendor side after that? Because we want to make sure that we're, being completely transparent and non-biased from all sides. We want to help out everyone in this situation. So
definitely. So, and to make sure that I am understanding the question properly, Bronwyn, are you talking about people who just want to, for the time being, cancel and then maybe come back and rebook later, or
either
they just
way,
don't know?
Don't know. So hearing about a lot of cancellations, but not knowing whether they decided to, just go to the courthouse if the courthouse is open, or have it in their living room, or maybe cancel and reschedule with another venue. Just straight cancellations, unsure of the reason, or unsure of what they're going to be actually doing afterward.
Definitely. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. And it's not like the answer changes too much either way anyways. So here's the deal. Again, I'm a bit repetitive right now, but this is going to be entirely contingent upon the language in your client agreement. Of course, this applies, that statement applies from both the client side and from the vendor side as well. So I had, just kind of slight tangent here, I had a client this week who ran into an issue with this where her client decided that they wanted to just flat out cancel. They were nervous about rescheduling because timing, everything's speculative. They didn't know when they could reschedule.
For sure.
I completely understand that.
Yeah, definitely.
And they knew that they had language within the contract that said non-refundable deposit, like all payments are non-refundable, et cetera, et cetera. They tried to say that language did not apply and was unfair because these were extreme times and that this is just a highly emotional time. Yes, it is a highly emotional time.
Right.
Yes, it is an extreme time. That has nothing to do with the strength of a contract. Like that has, as I said yesterday to somebody, that has nothing to do with like the sky's still blue and the grass is still green and the contract is still a contract is a contract. This is why you have to read your contracts thoroughly before you sign them so that you know exactly what you are literally signing up for.
Okay.
So that being said, no, there's nothing about the coronavirus that makes that creates any sort of like automatic refund type of scenario. We're going to have to look directly at the language in our own contracts.
Yeah. Okay. We just got a question popping in as you were saying this from Co-working Bravely. Thank you for your question. You mentioned the first 8 weeks. Is that something that's coming from recommendations somewhere that I've missed?
Yeah, the CDC put out, I need to actually write down the start date of this because we might actually be in week 7 now.
Yeah.
The CDC put out guidelines both don't quote me exactly on the date, but I think it was last Friday they put out guidelines stating that events of 10 or more, or gatherings, they didn't say events, gatherings of, last Friday it was like 50 or more.
Yeah, I think it went from 250 to 50 to 10 in like a period of 48 hours or something.
Exactly. I think it was by like Monday morning they said they strongly recommended no gatherings larger than 10 at a time. And again, those are guidelines, Sarah. Those are that's not a law. That's not a mandate. That's not an executive order. But because we have those guidelines, that makes it, anyways, because those are guidelines, that can create liability if you do still continue and knowingly put people at risk.
And so it was in that report that it said that 8 weeks as well.
And again, it's not like I'm a researcher. I'm on the front lines of any of that. So I'm just going off the best information I can get there.
Right. So, Amanda, we will get to your question here in a bit. We have that question, so rest assured we will answer it. Stay around. Mads, she is one of the couples that is getting married. So, Mads, into the 8 weeks is May 16th. Okay.
That's what, from my math is not my strong suit, but from my math, May 16th is what I had written down as well.
Okay, awesome. So hope that answers your questions there for a moment. And
Ron,
as far as...
Can I interrupt you I'm so sorry. One thing I didn't finish a thought that I had here.
Sorry, I'm so sorry. I probably interrupted.
No, it's not your fault at all. I'm like, I'm getting like, I have so many thoughts bouncing around in my brain. I don't think I addressed this properly or thoroughly enough from the client perspective as well. Okay. Because of course I've been talking to so many vendors this week, and so that's just what's ingrained in my brain. However, I will say from the client side, I can't imagine. One of my best friends I'm a bridesmaid in a wedding in May. I can't imagine what it's like to be in this scenario right now. And I entirely understand why you were talking, or why you would be wanting a refund at best. Because this is there's no way to sugarcoat it. This is a really, really hard scenario. So that's something that if you have hired actual professional business owners here, that's something that you should talk to them. No, don't be accusatory, anything like that, but talk to them about it. And see what kind of deal they would be willing.
I may have you repeat.
Willing to work out with you. There we go. Okay. Yeah. Sorry, this is just something I would encourage. Oh wait, there we go. Okay.
I think we're good now.
I would encourage any couple to reach out to their hired professional and just talk to them about it. And again, don't be accusatory, and don't be, let's try to take as much emotion out of these business conversations that we can. Yeah. However, there are a lot of really, really, really great people I've talked to this week who are doing every single thing that they can to help their clients right now without literally bankrupting themselves. Yeah. Just from a vendor perspective, a lot of vendors that I've spoken to this week, I mean, in a matter of just a couple of days, a lot of people have gone from having, you know, their annual income kind of figured out to all of a sudden losing almost up to half of it, because this is the height of wedding season. And so there's just factors, like some people are talking about bankruptcy. It's not that they're trying to necessarily be mean by not giving refunds. Yeah. I just want to throw that out there.
Yeah, it's true. It's very true. It's hard for everyone on both sides. It really sucks. So I appreciate you saying that too, because I think that's important as well to note that it sucks from every possible side. Mm-hmm. Every possible side. Okay, so vendor question. When we are rescheduling a client, what types of forms and agreements need to be signed? Does there need to be an entirely new contract written?
Great question. So when you are rescheduling a client, here's something that I'm seeing. This is something that misadvice that I'm seeing spread online, and things that I'm seeing people do wrong right now. Okay. I would not consider this a scenario where just an amendment of a contract is proper. Okay. So some people think amendments they can be a tricky area of the law. First of all, if you're doing this without a lawyer, you can screw it up really easily, just bluntly. We have a lot of extenuating circumstances going on here. I'm going to repeat throughout this conversation that this is a time, if there were ever a time to run your business conservatively, meaning let's make sure every T is crossed and every I is dotted, this is it. Yeah. So that being said, I want you to go a step further. I want you to use a rescheduling agreement. Okay. That's just that's not necessary. That's a term I kind of made up this week a bit. Okay. But,
I bet you've made up a lot of things like that this week. Real creative. Unprecedented.
It's along the same lines of a termination agreement in terms of what it contains, but this is going to set forth the language as to what you all are agreeing to in terms of whether or not you're retaining the vendor's retaining the deposit and refunding some money if they've decided to kind of try to just split the baby a little bit there. If the vendor has agreed, for example, that maybe the deposit applies to the next or to the rescheduled date, just those types of things. It's going to state the new date of the new wedding date. Okay. Here's what's critical in it. It's also going to have a mutual release clause, or it should. That mutual release clause protects both the vendor and the client, because you all don't want to be accidentally on the hook for that previous contract. And hey, Lisa. And here's one way that this can go. Sorry, I got a phone call. That might happen.
Oh no, are we cutting out again? So crucial.
I should have put my phone on.
I haven't put my phone on Do Not Disturb yet either, and I'm like, it's only a matter of time.
I forgot, and that will probably happen a few times, guys, and I'm really sorry. That is my week. Anyways, what was I saying? Mutual release clause.
Mutual release clause. It releases you from the previous contract. That's exactly the part you were talking about.
Yes. Okay. So here's something that I've seen accidentally pop up this week a few times. Vendors are trying to be really nice. A lot of them have language that state that all payments are non-refundable. Some people are still deciding to go against their own contract and refund like everything but the deposit. The vendor, you're trying to be a good, kind human by doing that, but you're actually running counter to your own contract. So you don't want to be in any sort of scenario where you're accidentally in breach of your own contract and just trying to do the right thing and losing money while doing it. Same for the client. We need to start from scratch. We need a fresh start. Okay. So that all being said, that's why it behooves both sides to have that mutual release language. And then to answer the second part of that question, once you all sign that rescheduling agreement, start fresh and just re-sign your client agreement once again. A lot of people have asked if they can have people sign that at the same time, and the answer is absolutely yes. Just do them all together.
And do you have templates of these available for purchase?
I do. Yeah. Thank you for asking. I wrote one for a client. I don't remember, someday this week. I can't remember. Anyways, and I just redacted the names and put it straight in the shop. So that the one that I wrote for my custom client is in the shop right now.
Awesome. And we'll talk more about that for our viewers too that don't know about that resource. We'll talk more about that at the end as well.
Thank you.
It's an amazing, amazing resource. And I'll pause you real quick. We've been getting some more comments on there. Let's see, the ladies at Anthazai. Guys, this is so helpful and needed. Thank you for addressing it from both the client and vendor perspective. Thank you. Thank you for tuning in. We're hoping that it helps. So that was good to hear.
Yeah, definitely.
And then let's see, we said hi to Lisa and Elope Jackson just hopped on the brief. This is tremendously helpful from a client and vendor perspective. Awesome. Thank you. Paige, you are so great on what you do. Your knowledge and law amazes me and is so helpful to me.
That is so nice. Thank you so
nice.
Much. And then really appreciate that.
Anthony, I was about to ask. We will both be linking everything that you'll need there because there's also not going to be anything out there readily available like this. So we'll talk some more about that too and make sure we link it at the end of this as well.
Thank you.
And then let's see, upon a successful rescheduled date due to the virus, do you suggest
we might have
might have gone over that. Hang on.
I think we just answered that one. Yeah.
Okay.
No, that was my
I'm
fault.
so sorry. Okay. Yeah. So tips on how to reschedule your calendar in 8-week increments.
Yeah, that's a random note that I just kind of like threw at Bronwyn, but I have a point.
No, it's great. We need to know, and for brides and grooms too that are kind of thinking about that as well. I have some ideas after your I would really like to get your perspective on this as well, obviously. Here's an issue that some of my clients have run into this week, and that is, well, like we already talked about, what is our end date here? We have no idea. Right. The only framework that we really have to work off of, again, are just that 8-week period that the CDC gave us. Yeah. So to me, that's the only logic we have to work off. Let's go with it. So what I've been telling people to do is reach out to those clients, or I'd say clients, reach out to the couples within that first 8-week period. So like somebody said, up until May 16th. May 16th, yeah.
And if I were you, again, this isn't legal. This is just me as a business owner. Right. If I were you, I'd reach out to them first and give them first dibs on rescheduling. Okay. Like send, and let's be clear, I want you to email these people individually, not as a mass group.
Right.
So that just seems like that saves you from a little bit of an issue later on down the road where maybe you could be emailing everybody that you have scheduled through the summer and run into an issue of having like 30 people trying to reschedule at once. So yeah, I would start with reaching out to the people in that first 8-week period, and then maybe taking that next chunk, the next 8-week period. Here's something else that's come up a lot this week. You don't need to reach out to people. If the wedding does not have to be canceled yet, you don't need to make your client reschedule yet. Okay. Even if it seems like it could happen, and like even if we know, for example, if you have a wedding in early May and it's kind of looking like the odds are it could be postponed, right? You don't need to make your client, unless that's a business decision that you want to make. You don't have to make the client reschedule yet. I just think there's a little bit of logic, and it's a bit wise to go ahead and let them have a backup in place. Yes. So that if let's say we get to the end of April and we're talking about an early May wedding, and all of a sudden we have on a federal level a lockdown like what Italy is going through right now. Right. That's just another scenario where I see potential liability that we can cut off right now. So maybe it would be helpful. I think we timed out for a second there. Okay, we're back. I just think it would be helpful to go ahead and save yourself a bit of a headache right now And if you have that May client,
Yes.
just let them have a backup date in September so that if they need to just, pull the trigger,
Absolutely.
they can do it. So just my 2 cents on that.
I think that, for couples as well, having that option, but still knowing, it's not a definite, you may not have to reschedule, but if you do, that's so much less stress because we're not going to know until closer to, and it gets more stressful the closer you get to weddings. I just feel sick to my stomach knowing about couples who found out 48 hours beforehand and had to cancel. I mean, that's
exactly right.
The worst scenario I could ever imagine. I mean, 24 hours, some people too. I mean,
I know.
Back when it got really serious a few days ago, that's what some couples were going through as far as, weekday weddings and elopements. They had like 48 hours, 24 hours to cancel or figure out what they were going to do. So I think it is wise on, a customer service standpoint for vendors too, because you want your brides to come away from this with as low stress as possible. So it's good. It's a win for everyone. I love that tip. That's awesome.
Yeah. I think that's just our job in terms of taking care of our clients. Like we've already said, this scenario just isn't unpleasant all the way around.
Yeah.
Anyways.
So, okay, this is a really good question. Another question from Mads, who is a bride with a wedding at the end of May. What does it look like if your wedding is in the end of May and you're not planning on rescheduling just yet, but the rest of your vendor payments are due before the beginning of May? This is interesting.
That's a good question. You know what? You're the first person, Gold Star, you're the first person to ask me a new question this week. So here's the deal. First of all, I hope that most of your vendors have been in touch with you so far. And if they haven't, I would encourage you to reach out to them. If you're in that flirting with that gray zone that we were talking about, where we can't say for certain that the wedding should be rescheduled, I would reach out to your vendors, your vendor team. I would, and Bronwyn, if you disagree with any of this, shoot me down.
Okay.
I would tell them that you're just keeping an eye on this and you know that you're just around or outside of that 8-week zone, and you're worried about making payments for something that may need to be rescheduled anyways, and see if they would be willing to enter into any sort of it wouldn't be a settlement agreement, but any sort of just little agreement where you guys can agree together to put those payments on hold.
Right.
Until we know for certain that the wedding can actually happen on that date. Now, from a negotiation standpoint, that might be, maybe it's just putting the payments on hold so that they could be transferred to a new date. Because if you were, you said this is a bride that's asking this question, right?
Yes, yes, okay. A bride at the end of May.
Yeah, so your vendors right now are under a lot of financial strain, And so they might, again, this is just speaking from a negotiation standpoint, they might just reflexively and maybe impulsively think, I don't want to give up any more payments.
Right.
If you say something along the lines of, let's put those payments on hold and see if we could transfer them. I'm sorry, I told you I was going to get a lot of calls.
Wait, we can take
I really should have put my phone.
No, you're so fine. We can both swipe down, put ours on, take a second and put ours on Do Not Disturb if you want. Do you want to do that right now?
Let's see. We can, whatever you want to do.
Are you good?
Yeah.
Okay. We can give you a second to do that.
Why not?
Okay. Risk it. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, good.
Yeah, we could.
Okay.
I'm afraid I'll screw it up somehow if I do. So anyways, just see if you could transfer the payment is really my point. And that is just speaking, if I were to represent you in a negotiation for that, that's exactly what I would ask for. I would spin it to say, hey, I'm not asking for you to give up your money. I'm just asking for you to get it 3 months later.
Right. And I absolutely agree with you. Yeah. My only immediate thought on that was it sucks at this moment right now because the right thing to do and the ethical thing to do as a vendor, in my opinion, would be do everything you can. However, contractually, you still are bound to the payments, but and I think most vendors would agree, absolutely, I would want to push them off, but with financial pressure at this moment, some of them literally may not be able to. So it is some of those things where you just come at it from, honestly, those are my only thoughts on that. So it's just a sucky situation, but I would definitely ask.
And exactly.
So
kind of a quick note. I was on a call. Yeah, I was on a call with a group this morning, and they're not in the wedding industry. They own quite a few restaurants around our city of Tulsa here.
Yeah.
And here's something that's happening with anybody that owns. We had an executive order come out in Tulsa this week that basically shut down all restaurants and bars and spas and fitness studios, et cetera. So what happens to all of those people who, all of those businesses who are now not bringing in any sort of cash flow, but still have rent due? What we're trying to negotiate with pretty much every single landlord of every client I have in that scenario, it's some sort of like rent abatement where it's either a lessened monthly payment right now or deferred payment, and it can be tacked on to later payments down the road. This is kind of this is one of the oddest scenarios from an economics, or just from, I don't know if we're looking at it from a historical standpoint. When have we ever had like every aspect of our economy essentially shut down? And that's a bit of a broad statement, but I mean, it's not like it's just one area. So it's there's kind of an aspect of we need to work together a bit here.
Definitely.
I'll get off that.
It is unprecedented, uncharted waters. So it feels better to be working towards the same goal, rather than being so hard, stuck to your guns on that. Okay. So Julie, extension, we changed the due dates on a few contracts and re-signed. That should have had a question mark because I have no clue if that's okay.
Well, if it's re-signed, then it is a done deal. So, so you're good with that. Julie, that's something that we can talk about one-on-one as well, just because I know you personally. But moving forward, I would have people sign a rescheduling agreement. Just again, I'm being uber conservative here. I don't know if every other lawyer would say that, but I'm always thinking from the perspective of if I'm prepping my client for court, what would I do? I would want to have a whole list of papers that say, hey, judge, here's how many times my client went over and beyond to try to do the right thing.
Yeah.
So, we can talk about that.
Personally, I like to call myself the doomsday prepper of business owners. Like, just prep for the absolute worst scenario ever. That's why I'm like, I always am like pumping up you and your business. And I'm like, it can happen. Crazy crap. Like, this is unprecedented. It's insanity. So it's like, might as well prep for the worst. Overdo it. Yeah, exactly. And I'll this is a soapbox I shouldn't get on, but I'll just make one little tiny note. Please get on it. We want to hear. If this doesn't teach, if any wedding vendor is watching this, if this doesn't teach you to use a lawyer and to actually get a contract in place, I don't know what will. Right. Please. Like, if you take anything from this conversation, please find a lawyer that you can talk to, and especially one in your state, because that's always something that you should do. But right now we have different rules rolling out in different states and different cities. And so please do that. And it's not only to protect them too, it's to protect their clients as well. And it's the most professional thing you can do. Definitely. I think it sounds scary to present a contract. And I know you've run into that before, of especially a lot of creative people tend to be on the milder and meeker side. And, they don't like getting down to being so direct and sign this because it feels so not, I guess, warm, not like a family run business or like a single person run own business, but it's so imperative. And I think it makes you look more professional and people respect you more because they're like, okay, they know what they're doing. I'm going to be taken care of. So from a customer service standpoint, I think it's a great thing to have contracts in place. They don't, definitely. They shouldn't scare you. I think that clients like to have those in place because it shows that you're a real business. Absolutely. So I can, like I said, I can do a whole hour talking about that, but I will spare everybody because that's not how you want to end your week, I'm sure. Definitely. Okay. But I will come back and talk about that later. We have some more awesome questions going in. I'm actually going to read the bottom one first because this is really interesting. I've been thinking about this today. This is from Bayshore Ranch Venue. Can we force reschedules? We have a bride that does not want to reschedule for next weekend, but I think we may force it. It's a great question. Really good question. And I'm not sure where,
I'm not sure where you're located. I'm not sure if there are any sort of executive orders in place for your city, your state, anything like that. So working off of the presumption that you're in a city or state that doesn't have any sort of mandate in place that would limit you for it or from it. This is something that I'm not trying to dodge the question. This is
Florida.
Something
In
Florida. Okay. Okay. Oh, my sister lives in Florida. Not that is relevant to my answer. Sorry. It's been a long week. Anyways, this is something, especially venues. This is something where I'm going to have to really look at your contract before I can give you a straight answer. B, just because it would be speculative and I would be blowing smoke at you if I acted like there was a direct answer to it. B, being a venue like we spoke about, you have a highly increased amount of liability compared to compared to every other vendor involved in putting a wedding together. So can you reschedule or can you force a reschedule? You have to look at your contract.
And what are you looking for specifically when you're saying you need to look at your contract for this specific question? What are you looking for in a vendor's contract if you are looking over this for them to be able to discern whether or not they are able to force a cancellation?
I'm really looking for just a couple of little words, like one or two words sprinkled throughout. I'm looking for some language around incapacitation or impossibility. I'm looking at limitation of liability. I may be looking at assumption of risk. This is one of those scenarios too where, because a lot of people have asked me if there's like one paragraph that just deals with the coronavirus or this scenario. This question answers that for me. I'm looking at the entire document because some contracts will have language that talk about basically not knowingly putting the parties at risk, something along those. It won't be phrased like that, but something to that effect. So I would really recommend that that you all reach out to somebody local and have them review and go on from there. And I'd also just really quickly too, I would recommend that you reach out to your clients that you're wanting to force a reschedule on and have a really direct conversation with them and tell them why and what liability they can carry by proceeding.
Can they also talk about the risk of putting their employees and staffing that building as part of the reason why they need to reschedule?
I'd lay it out. I would put it all out on the table.
Okay.
Like I said, I completely so go ahead, Bronwyn. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. So there was actually a wedding in Australia that I'm sure you saw. 31 guests got coronavirus from that wedding, including a pregnant woman. And that was this past week. So, I mean, it's incredibly dangerous to host something right now. And are they, I mean, are they allowed to get that blunt with them? Is it okay to say things like that? Okay.
Yeah. I was in a wedding last year and I think it was 63 of us got the flu.
Lord.
So kind of going to their next question here, what liability would the couple have if I wanted to be a real jerk and sue my friend for hosting an event where she knew somebody showed up with the flu? I can do that. And here's where this is a tough statement for some people to hear. You don't have to necessarily be doing something wrong to get sued.
Right.
And if you get sued, you can't just say, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to upset you. Let me back out of this. You're in it. Like it's like you're being drafted. Like you have no choice but to be in it. So the couple could however many people the couple have as guests for the wedding, that's how many people could potentially get litigious with them.
Yeah, it's true. Which luckily, and I would think that another point that you could point out to them is there may be a lot of guests that won't be able to make it, especially if they're out of state. They won't probably want to come and expose themselves, especially at this point next week, because as we've seen, the CDC keeps getting harder and harder on the regulations, and not to be speculative with that as well. But I'm just thinking they're not going to have the wedding that they want if they go ahead and have it next week, because their guests are not going to be able to be there.
Yeah, well, and I mean, think of this was the last thing I'll say to this to this point is what I would say to the client or to the couple would be, this is your wedding day. You are bringing together literally all of the people in the world that you love. So like, think about that for a second. You're bringing together literally all of the people in the world that you love, and putting them in one room together while we have a national or international pandemic going on. And it's a really risky time. You could expose literally everybody. There's a story out from, anyways, so like it was like a whole family got
from a family gathering in New Jersey.
Anyways,
mm-hmm.
yeah, I just heard about that yesterday. It was awful. So anyways,
going back up to the next one from Mads, again, a little bit different scenario, but what if this 8-week period gets extended? You decide to change your wedding plans altogether, not asking for a refund of deposit, but hesitant to pay the rest of the contract money if she might lose it all.
Yeah, that would be another, the great question. And that would be another reason why you want to have that rescheduling agreement that states exactly how these payments are going to be handled. And for example, if any of the payments are transferable, or if there's some sort of, if you come to some sort of agreement about still being on the hook for the payments, but they're just delayed until we get closer to the actual wedding date. So that's something that you should talk to that vendor about, and you should ask them to sign this rescheduling agreement. So that you all are contractually obligated to get you out of having to pay those payments for something that's not happening in May.
Yeah, that's going to be really good for both parties again.
Yeah, definitely.
Beneficial. Yeah. So let's see. Issues with rescheduling. This is a big one too. And we also may run out of time on here. If we do, what do you want to do? Do you want to hop over on creative law and be what Oklahoma to finish it out? Or
would that bore people too much if I keep?
No.
I would like to finish this conversation for people so that you have this information. So I'm happy to do that. I didn't even look at the time. Goodness.
Okay, perfect. I know we have 5 minutes left, I think. So,
thank you.
Yeah. Oh, Anthas, I literally just purchased the rescheduling agreement from your creative law shop. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so issues with rescheduling. So we'll just know that if we cut off, we will be over at Creative Law Shop, and Be What Oklahoma will put the second half on there. Issues with rescheduling, unable to comply with new date. Vendor, 2 brides of mine are now moving locations, and this moves to totally different states. Each want refunds. I have no idea how to approach the complete switch of venues and states. Do I travel to them now? How does that work with keeping the same date, but the client switches the location? Now, one says they will stay in the original state, but would still like a refund. And so, that opens a whole new can of worms.
Yeah, this kind of stuff has been these have been the most common questions I've been getting this week, probably. Yeah. So just taking it in chunks, we have a couple that has rescheduled, but they're moving locations or states and or cities.
Yes. So these are destination vendors, florists, photographers, planners that commonly travel, but obviously right now that's kind of a difficult thing.
Yeah, so this would be another scenario. Again, I sound really repetitive. I apologize, but this is another reason why you want to have that rescheduling agreement and then enter into a new contract with them. Because if they are changing the location, state, city, and you're obviously going to start carrying different travel costs and, different things associated with that, you need to be paid for your travel. And so in that new contract or re-signing of the client agreement that you all had signed originally, maybe you've added in a clause with your client's knowledge. I want to drill that point home. But you and your client have recognized that you will need to be compensated for that travel. So get a rescheduling agreement, get out of your original obligations, enter into a new one that contemplates the new scenario that we have at hand.
Okay.
Let's see here. So, okay. So I think that kind of, and then the refund spaced out there.
Good.
There you go. In terms of can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. In terms of the refund part of that question, again, that's going to depend strictly upon the wording of your contract. So
Okay.
I'm going to keep saying that.
Under the contract. Okay.
Yeah.
So on this one, I believe what the deal is the couple actually wants to move to a different state, but have it still on the same day during the pandemic.
Oh, I'm sorry. I misunderstood.
No, you're so fine. And it
Okay.
wasn't written like that. It was just knowledge that I was also trying to, this came from Bewood, Oklahoma, and I did not want to reveal who it was. So I was editing out some of the verbiage, and I think I probably accidentally left that out. So they're planning on having it the same day, but moving to a location that just has less strict restrictions right now.
Okay. So, the CDC guidelines that I keep using as my framework in this conversation this is a nationwide thing. Mm-hmm. So, you're still working with that same liability, and it goes back to the first part of our conversation where we were talking about, do you really want to expose yourself, your business, to that type of liability during this 8-week period? Mm-hmm. So I won't repeat the whole thing. I would refer back to the first part of our conversation for that.
Okay. All right. So then let's see what happens. Ooh, this is a very good one. Mm-hmm. What happens if a couple books a new date without consulting one or a few of the vendors, but that's just what the venue happens to have available, and then the other vendors don't have that date available? What happens?
Yeah, this is happening to a lot of my clients right now. So one, I want people to look for what I'm calling the third option. So there's what one person wants, what the other person wants. We can find a middle road, I think, a lot of times. So depending on what kinds of services you offer, it may be, you might be able, for example, if you're a photographer, I was talking to somebody yesterday, you might be able to find another photographer to step in for you, and then you be the one to edit the photos to be cohesive with your portfolio. So try to think outside the box like that.
Really good idea.
Yeah, but if this kind of leads right into cancellation, which we can talk about when we start our next talk, but if they do book and you're not able to actually show up and perform services on that wedding date, you need to go ahead and have a termination agreement and terminate that contract that you all are originally contracted under.
Okay. So it is now 2:00. I'm afraid we're about to be kicked off. So I'm going to go ahead and end it, save it to this story, and we will continue our second half of the talk on BWED Oklahoma, B.E. WED Oklahoma, and creative law shops. So we will be right back to you. Going to switch over. Okay.
Bye.
Bye.